This is the third in a series of monthly inspirational talks hosted and curated for Elevate by our learning partner, Matt Bolton-Alarcón of Special Source Training. Matt has worked for the last 2 decades in learning and development. He has trained thousands of people all over the world from companies like Google, L'Oreal and Innocent. In this session, Matt explores psychological safety and busts a few myths around this subject. He shares practical tips on how you can build more psychological safety into the teams you're in. It doesn't matter what level you're at, it's not just about leadership. Anyone in a team can help build upon it, because when you do, and you're in a great high-performing team, people feel like they can self-express and bring their whole self to work. Who doesn't want more of that? The Venue Group create hospitality concepts across the world that are built on the power of experience. Goods Way is their King's Cross venue, which is where this podcast was recorded with a live audience.
I'd like to introduce Matt, the legend, onto the stage to make a better job of it than we just did.
So thanks for the intro. Delighted to be here. I'm here to talk about a topic called psychological safety. I'll explain my connection to that topic. I'm not a psychologist, but I feel as though I am expert in the topic, but there's still more things to learn. But before I get into it, I always get a bit of crowd interactivity going. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, in little huddles, so there's a lovely little 3 there, in the land of Bonquette, and another little 3 there. 2s are fine. You know, it's fine, totally fine. Me and Benny will have a chat up on stage. Obviously, naughty chairs, cigar chairs at the back. Love to have a 2-part conversation. The first part of that conversation, I want you to think. By the way, I always use little, like a PowerPoint, little visuals, like Bob Dylan in some video he did once for Subterranean Blues, I believe. So I'm just going to peel these off. But I want you to have a conversation about, I want you to think about a team that you've been in that was rocking, absolutely rocking, where you collaborated well, you got stuff done really well, you could challenge each other, all those things. What was going on in that team? What kind of situation was it? What kind of team was it? It might be a sports team. It might be a pub quiz team. It might be a work team. It might be an assembled team working on a particular event that you're not even in the same company, but it just gelled really well. It might even be your family. Some people are shaking their head right now. So a high-performing rocking team. And all I want you to do, the first part of the conversation is, what's going on in those high-performing teams? What is it about it that makes it high-performing in a rocking team? Okay, that's your first part of the conversation. Have it with your buddies in those small groups. I've been mindful of all these naughty seats at the back. Keep the conversation to that topic, if that's okay. Away you go. You've got 1 minute to have a conversation about that. Go. Bit of music, Benny. Bit of music. By the way, if you're listening on the podcast right now, sorry, you can carry on talking. Just have a think about that. What's a great team you've been a part of? Why was it such a great team? Thank you. Okay, everyone. So that I felt a bit of a shame to stop you in conversation there, but I'd love to hear some of the things that made the team rocking. What was it about the team that made it work really well? I'll quickly go first. I was once in a team where I used to work for an innovation company, and the best thing about this team was when someone needed help, they could just call out without any judgment. If they were really struggling with something, had a big challenge, they could call out and get help without fear of being judged, which I really liked. Okay. We also took the mick out of each other a lot, but that's another story. Okay. So let me just, this thing here, anyone know the character? BB-8 from Star Wars. Yeah. Okay. It's not any usual normal BB-8. It's just the BB-8 of truth. So what's going to happen is I'm going to randomly toss it into the group. And I'd just like to find out, whoever it lands with, what made the team you're talking about really special. Just a few words about that. Then we'll hear a couple of others, randomise it around the room. Just a bit of health and safety. Before we do this, can everyone put their drinks down? Somewhere safe, or hold it, but just don't let it knock drinks over. And probably throw it like this, rather than like this, okay? So we'll just hear from 5 or 6 people, okay? So here we go. Mel, I'm going to start safe. What made your team rocking? Just to say that is my kid's toy. If you could not like spill it on the floor with all the beer, but there we go. Yeah, go. Oh, we go.
So for us, it was coming together through adversity. So there was this real sense of camaraderie, of we're all in it together, and lots going on.
Brilliant. So in difficult times, it pulled us together. Absolutely. Fantastic. If you could toss it on in a very delicate fashion. Yeah. Oh, Zoe / Nicola. Yeah. Go.
I always feel safe when there's banter. Like it's not.
Yeah.
There's just like natural banter. Like you can have a laugh. You don't take yourself too seriously, and that is all the way up and all the way down. Like you just.
Lovely. So when natural banter happens, not forced banter. Forced banter is good, isn't it? Yeah. Natural banter, good. Fantastic. What else? Great. Health and safety, it's moved about 5 yards. No drinks have been spilled for those listening on the podcast. Yes, what made your team rocking?
We're all good at different things, and we're good at acknowledging that some stuff we might be good at, but not others. And just journaling
Fantastic.
and having that, not having ego and
Yeah, brilliant. I remember seeing the 3 founders of Innocent talk about what made them such a good partnership as the 3 founders. And they were really explicit about what they were really bad at. and each of them had different skills. And they recruited people, surrounded themselves with people who were better at other things. So it creates that diversity of thought, right? Has got to be honest about it, though. Fantastic. Great. Another gentle, we're going to the groups at the back. Dangerous, but, BB-8 might never return. Yeah.
I'll do it for the both of us.
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Being surrounded by the most amazing talent you've ever been surrounded by.
Yeah.
And being inspired by that talent. And being in a team with a lack of hierarchy and ego.
Yeah.
Despite there being one.
Yeah.
Everyone knows exactly what they've got to do.
Fantastic.
And it just works like a machine.
So great talent, no unnecessary hierarchy. Fantastic. Let's bring it back to the front. Great.
Mine was respect across the board and an understanding or just a core belief that everybody has the best of intentions.
Yeah.
What they're doing. So even if a mistake is made or something is missed, then you know the person working on it had the best of intentions and you approach the problem from that perspective.
Fantastic, yeah. Lovely. I think I heard a bit of language around that a few years ago, which was even in very tricky situations, someone's trying things out, assume good intent, because if you're pulling together, but it takes a bit to get that, doesn't it? So great stuff. Anyone else desperate to share theirs, even without BB-8? Go on, you are, yeah, because Max pointed at you. Let's have the final one.
We were talking about shared passion.
Lovely.
Really, all of us getting in behind whatever we're talking about. And leadership, getting rid of it and almost having no hierarchy, everybody on the same page, as we talked about over there.
Yeah,
Everyone
fantastic.
in and having pizzas till 1 a.m.
Yeah, yeah. Because you want to be there. You want to be there and do good work together, yeah.
People I think have got your back, I think is one
Yeah.
saying no man left behind type
Yeah.
scenario. So I think there's that one.
Yeah, wow. Good stuff. And me and Benny were chatting. Benny's in a very good band, by the way. The Longheads. Check them out, a few festivals this year. And even though very different musical talents, different differences, actually all pulling together, trying to achieve the same thing. Very similar to what you were describing there, similar passion. Okay, so brilliant. That's all going on there. The flip of that is, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation or a team where it's not rocking, it's a bit rocky. I'm not going to do the breakout on this one because it could be a bit of a depressing chat on a Tuesday night. It's been a long week. It's Tuesday, But what's the opposite of that? When you're in a team that's not quite rocking, how does it feel? Stressful, great. Give me an example.
We had a new CEO come in and he said, even though you work for an amazing business, a well-known business, I'm going to assume you're all shit until
Brilliant.
you prove yourselves.
Fantastic.
That was the business leaders of an advertising agency responsible for client business.
Yeah, lovely. I love that. So from assume good intent to assume everyone's shit as a vote. So that is not going to lead to high performance in a group of individuals. You've probably got a load of people thinking they were quite good going, am I? Yeah, right, okay. Brilliant, great leadership approach. Fantastic. Wasn't you, just to make that clear. Yeah. Any other examples, how it feels?
Top-down
leadership.
I've always hated top-down leadership.
Yeah.
Is it like treating others as if they're somehow kind of below you?
Yeah.
I've always struggled with it. Like, so anywhere I've gone with it, like, I'm just like, I don't want to be there.
Exactly.
I prefer like collaborative approach and like, you know, everyone working in together and like, you know, I think that's how you get the best out of people.
Yeah, fantastic. So, and I'm seeing a shift in that. I work at quite a few conferences where you can really tell what the leaders are trying to be more of. And I'm seeing them trying to be less top down, but still sometimes being a bit top down. Okay, so as in top down in the hierarchy, not removing their t-shirts. Let's be clear on that. So right, everyone. So we are here to talk about what you're describing here is you're describing a lot to do with the subject of psychological safety. And what I want to do is just kind of go, number one, a hands up if you've ever heard of this term psychological safety, apart from on the Elevate invitation tonight. Okay, so some people in the room, others not. Anyone happy to call out their personal definition of it? I'll make this an easy ask, which is, what does that mean to you? That means that whatever you say, the answer is correct. Because it's whatever it means to you. So what does psychological safety mean to you, for those that have heard of it? Nicola?
Safe to fail.
Safe to fail. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, what else?
Being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Psychologically vulnerable.
Fantastic. So being vulnerable so that you can get that help from other people, etc. Any others? Yeah?
Just being yourself.
Yeah, be yourself in any situation, but we're talking about work here mainly.
You don't feel you are judged.
Yes, fantastic. You're not being judged for your input and your part in the team, etc. Okay, cool. Anyone know where the original phrase or the terminology comes from? The origins of the phrase? Okay, I've got to give the credit, you see, because it's not me. It's not me. It's someone called Dr. Amy Edmondson, okay, and works at Harvard, and quite clever, very clever, but has spent her life working out what makes a high-performing team. She studied teams in the world of healthcare, sport, technology companies, where there are lots of high-performing teams. I'm really cocking up with my boards tonight, the system there. But she talks about it as the shared belief that the work environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking, which is how someone from Harvard describes all the things that you just described, okay? So how I talk about it is this, bringing your whole self to work, okay? That's what happens when you're psychologically safe. So there we go. So really interesting topic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to describe, there are 3 myths around psychological safety, and my job is to try and kind of bust those myths as the evening goes on. And I've also got some tips on how you can build psychological safety in your teams. And I'm going to ask you to put 2 lenses on tonight. So can everyone do that with their left eye? Create a little lens with your left eye. One lens is to think about, you don't have to do it for long. That's a bit weird. I'd like you to have a lens of, in your teams, how can you help build even more psychological safety? Now, no matter what level you are, there are things you can do to encourage more psychological safety in that team, okay? And by the way, your teams might be fixed teams that you're working with a lot, or actually assembled teams to put on a big event or whatever it may be. Second one is, I would argue that the events industry, next lens, sorry, other lens, other eye. No one does it this time, great, okay. It's because you pick the drink up, isn't it? And it'd cause a bit of an injury. I think events professionals are psychological safety builders. Because if you put on an event, there's often a big focus on content, isn't it? As soon as someone calls through with, need an event, this is the event, what's the theme? Then they go venue. But actually, an event itself is all about building the connection, psychological safety of a group of people. So I think these tips can be really useful in how you provoke whoever's putting on that event to think differently about how they build this in their teams. Okay? Sound good? 2 lenses? Great. Right, let's deal with myth number 1. I'm going to share a quote from you I was talking about psychological safety about 4 years ago, which actually wasn't a term used that much in business back then. And I once had a CEO of a business step up, physically stand up like that. You'd love it, top-down approach, like almost do that. and then went, this sounds like tree-hugging nonsense. They actually said that in the room, of a room of about this many people. And I was like, okay. I went, number one, I quite like hugging trees. It's quite a nice thing to do. It's quite a fun thing to do. But when I dig deeper, what they were essentially saying was, myth number one, psychological safety is a nice to have, but it's not critical to business success, is pretty much what they were saying. Bit dangerous that this is going to be on a podcast, but the same CEO recently inquired about having some psychological safety training for their leadership teams. My answer was, no shit. So yeah, but that is a myth. That is a myth. So Amy Edmondson has studied high-performing teams across many organisations. As I said, healthcare, tech, sport, etc. A team at Google ran a project called Project Aristotle. I don't know if anyone's heard of that project or this. So they studied across Google. So there's a team at Google called People Analytics, and they actually analyze every, perceptions of Google. They look at, how long people stay in the company, all the things that, to see that they make it a workplace people want to be at. And one of the things that they look at is high-performing teams, ones that, deliver on what they need to deliver, etc. And they did an assessment of, well, what makes a high-performing team? And naturally, in a project like that, you start off with hypothesis, and then you go off and try and test that and challenge that. And what would you say hypothesis would be? What makes a high-performing team? Mine would have been things like, it's probably teams that socialise together. That makes a high-performing team, yeah. Or it might be that they've had a long tenure together, got 5 years, 10 years together, whatever. It might be that they have similar interests outside of work, similar geography. It wasn't any of those things. There was no common denominator. It was articulated that they had psychological safety. So now leaders at Google, managers of teams, are trained on how to build it in their teams. Also, very successful organizations like Toyota, they have psychological safety in a very different way across their organization. Anyone on the production line at Toyota can stop the production line and say there's something not working quite right, we need to fix it. Show that vulnerability, be quite brave. So really successful organizations like that. Pixar, one of the most creative companies in the world. Psychological safety is at the heart of everything they do. I've got a couple of stories from them today. So it's critical to business success. Okay, are we agreed on that in the room? Right, fine. Good. Okay, so here are the tips. So you've already said one of them as a tip, which is, my big advice, tip number one, is to show vulnerability. Okay. Now, this is so important right now because we are in a world that's totally disrupted. And so we are facing challenges that we haven't faced before, and neither have some of the leaders that we might work with and for. And so no one can have all the answers. Previous top-down approach for leadership was, what we say is pretty much what we have to do. We've got a 5-year strategy, and this is what we have to deliver. Those days are gone now. You've got to be vulnerable and say, I wasn't expecting X to happen, this to happen. Inflation going crazy these last few months. There are unprecedented times. So you have to show vulnerability and not have all the answers. I'm going to go quite extreme on a story here. This is from quite a few years ago. I'm going to journey you to Chile. Anyone here from Chile? No? Okay. But it's a great story where there was a mine, a copper and gold mine, collapsed on some miners, okay, that were working many kilometres underground. 700,000 tons of rock fell inside the mine. And what happened was there was an announcement to say the likelihood of survival. Okay, at that point. Anyone have a guess what percentage likelihood to get these guys out? Way too high, Max. You've doubled down. It's a 1% chance. 1% chance to survive. Good guess, actually. Well done. So that was stated as the challenge. We have never faced a challenge like this before, and there's a 1% chance of survival. And the hero of the story here, or there's many heroes, is the president of Chile at the time, Piñera. And Piñera said, I've got no idea how to solve this because we've not faced this before, but we're going to do everything we can to try and get these guys out, dead or alive. Okay, don't worry, there's a happy end to the story. It's all good. So, stated what the challenge was. Step 1, where are they? Location. Step 2, let's get them out. Let's rescue them. And then the real clever bit was to then go, right, I'm not an expert here. Where are my experts? They obviously got experts in mining from Chile. What was really cool, they then reached out to other people and got invited participation into this project, okay? They got people like NASA saying, we can help, okay? And NASA, they thought they'd use their expertise at going, how do we keep people in a confined space, sane and give them nutrition, all those things. So they were working with them on that. They set off loads of different approaches around how to use precision drilling to get through this rock, the hardest rock in the world. How do we get through it in a really, speedy way? And there were lots of attempts happening, and a lot of them were failing. Okay, what they didn't do is go, "You did wrong. You did wrong." They went, "What did you learn? Yeah, what can we improve for the next group that are working over there?" The breakthrough, and that is not a pun, the breakthrough idea came when the youngest field engineer spotted that all the attempts they were using just weren't going to work. And they located a really niche drilling company in the US and said, I think this technology will cut through that rock. 24-year-old field engineer with all these different expertise from around the world. And that was the breakthrough moment, okay? And 69 days later, they were called Los 33, the 33 miners, were rescued. They looked tired. They looked a bit disheveled. And they were rescued in a capsule that was co-designed with the Chilean Navy and NASA, one by one in this capsule. And there's amazing footage. I've got the goosebumps because I can see the images in my head. An amazing example. And what I love about that story is that the initial statement was being crystal clear on what the challenge was. It was also stating it's going to be a really difficult challenge. There was a bit of a plan, but the vulnerability to say, we haven't got a clue how we're going to do this, the honesty, but we're going to do everything we can. And it's a great story to show vulnerability. Now, it does butt up against, though, my next myth, which is, I've heard this a lot, that psychological safety, building it in teams, it's just for leaders. It's just the job of leaders to do that. I completely disagree. I think we can all make a contribution to make it a more psychologically safe place for other people. I think leaders need to believe in it and think it's a good thing, but I think we all can contribute towards that. And that's why I'm a bit of an evangelist around it. I do workshops on creativity and innovation, and now this is a key part of doing those workshops because I think it's so important in order to do good work together. So, a few tips. Going to get a bit more interactivity in the room in a minute. So I'm going to get you to do it right now, actually. So I would say tip number 2 is, so show vulnerability. The second one is to get people to speak up, okay? Now, I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting where you need to solve a problem, let's say. It's 1 hour long. Someone starts the meeting, goes, this is why we're assembled today. Da, 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 da. Yeah, they might show you a few slides. It's what they want to achieve. And then they, there's a few other things they want to share. Then they go, right, who's got an idea? And the moment you first speak up is where whatever comes out of your mouth has to be absolutely brilliant. Okay? Have you ever been in that situation? It's most meetings. It's most meetings. I think sometimes a meeting starts with a bit of informality and all those things. But if you can get people to speak up as early on the topic, before any genius answer is needed, it means they're warmed up to then contribute later on. I just ran today, it's why I'm losing my voice slightly, there's about 65 people working with Sainsbury's, great group. But 65 people in a group, it's quite brave to speak up in a group that big. So lots of mini moments of getting people to speak up without any pressure on the answer. What does this mean to you? When I say this word, what do you think? By the end of the session, every time I ask a question, people are like, giving it that, hands up, wanting to contribute. So what can you do to get people to speak up in meetings super early on? Okay? So, little speak up exercise right now. Okay, so it's a little group scenario, maybe a bit bigger. Going to go for a 5 there, 3, 5 there, whatever it may be. I'd like you to have a conversation about this, which is the next Elevate session that I will run will be in September. Okay, and it's going to be a bit of a wrap-up of the learning everyone's had through Elevate, okay? So I'm just going to ask you a bit of a celebration. So I'm going to ask you just to have a quick conversation about wrap-ups, learnings, celebrations, kind of any kind. What words pop into your head? What kind of things are you thinking when I say that? It's kind of wrap-ups, a celebration at the end of a journey, if you will. What words are popping into your head? Chat to your buddies. If you're doing this on the podcast, just think to yourself, call them out. What words are popping into your head with no pressure on the answer right now? No pressure at all. Away you go. So, the trick here is that there's no pressure on the answer. There's no pressure. I'm overhearing some things going on. And it's just warming people up into the topic. So, what words popped into your head? What kind of things? Booze. So, celebration, we need drink. Absolutely, yeah, right. What else? Cake. Booze, cake. Yeah, absolutely. So actually a ceremonial moment. Yeah, okay. I had reflections. So a bit of time actually, it's not often at events that you have a moment to actually ponder and reflect. It's often very active in the moment, yeah. I also heard another one in conversations, sharing a bit of failure is not a bad thing, and all that. But the point is, there's no pressure in saying, we need to do all these things. It's just getting people's voices out in the room. Then if I said, right, let's build a plan for what we're going to do for the wrap-up and celebration for Elevate. People have got some initial thoughts out. They're validated. They're out there in the room. The voice is out in the room. And they're going to be warmed up into the topic. So speak up nice and early. A little tip on this as well is if you're ever working where you receive a brief from someone, what I tend to do when I receive a brief is say, you may have sent a briefing document through or something like that. I just go, why don't you just talk stream of consciousness about everything that's going on around this challenge? Do not worry about making sense, sounding coherent, being succinct. Off you go. And that often unlocks the best thinking. And I'm just all ears, making notes, away I go. And then I can play some stuff back. So the power of allowing people to just speak up, get their voices out without too much pressure on the answer. Yeah? Too much time in the world of work, we have to sound precise. Those little sound bites of smartness. Listen to that. That was profound. Profundity bomb. It's like, whoa, just take the pressure off people, allow them just to let go. A bit like the intro tonight. So the next tip, moving from speak up, so I'll stop the jokes is what you just did there as well, which is small groups are bizarrely way more inclusive. So I know it may sound obvious to events professionals, but some people like to get everyone together in order to be inclusive. And then a majority of the room going, this is my worst nightmare. Okay. So let's have a little hands up. Who in the room, and it doesn't, safe space, we're in a speakeasy. Who in the room loves speaking up in groups this big? Well, we've got 30 people in the room, okay. Elevate, there's a bit of a bias towards this. Some of you are just holding back going, I know there's loads of other hands. Who needs about 2 or 3 drinks in order to do that? The 3 vodka Mel model. Who prefers not to in any context? Prefers not to. And yeah. So now, there's studies that have shown that the workplace is not really a good place for those that are more reflective and don't like speaking up in big groups. Susan Cain, who wrote the book Quiet, which is all about on a mission to make the workplace more conducive to people that are more introverted. She talks about traditional big meetings, say you're running a brainstorm, they have 3 psychological problems. One is, if you're in a big group, and when I say a big group, I'm saying 8 people is a big group. Yeah. You get 3 things happen. One is, if someone's dominating, which there always will be, everyone else social loafs. Yeah, social loafing is a psychological term that someone's dominating, you go, this is easy. And you just sit back and don't get involved. Just watch the action happen. It's brilliant when you go to a city that you don't know well, and you go, show me Bristol. I don't know it. And they just go, it's not good if you're trying to be active in a brainstorm or a meeting or a workshop. Second issue is production blocking, which is if someone else is sharing their idea, you're waiting to share your perspective on the issue. You've got a production blockage in the system. And then the third one, most important for psychological safety, is a feeling of evaluation apprehension, which is fear that as group sizes get bigger, that if your input isn't genius, you'll be personally judged for that input. And that's really dangerous. So a way of cutting through all that is any time you want any collaboration, get people in small groups, give them a focused topic to talk about, and then they'll be more confident to then share back to the wider group. But there's too much of a false economy of going, let's get super inclusive, let's get everyone in the room. I think it's the reverse. Psychological safety happens in smaller environments for me. Cool. So that's tip number 3, small groups. Myth number 3, it's my final myth, which is psychological safety. It's just about being nice to each other. Yeah, is it just about, you're great. Everything you say is great, and I love it. Yeah, is that psychologically safe? No, I think it's a bit fake. It's not. It's a bit superficial. So here are the final 2 tips to really get psychological safety happening in your teams. Thinking about the conferences you're working on and events, etc. So the next one is language stolen from a great book. It's a book just released the other week. I'll share the tip at the end. It's called the Psychological Safety Playbook. There's some really practical ways of building it in team situations. And they talk about it as you've got to encourage dissent. Okay? Not a problem in this room, I don't think. But encourage people to have a different point of view. Okay? So I really noticed this particularly in lockdown, when lockdown kicked in. I went from working in quite a lot of virtual teams. I was up in London a lot. I was traveling the world a little bit, quite well networked. And then my network in lockdown went from that to me and a dog in the house and some kids who didn't quite get the work I did with me telling them to be quiet quite a lot. And then my wife that was doing a totally different job. That was my network, okay? And I found that my bubble, if you will, had shrunk quite a lot. And what I noticed was, if I then broke out of that, what is called echo chamber, and went to see some other people, one of the things I loved to do was to say to them, I want you to challenge me in my thinking here, okay? I've got a friend called Richard who has never worked for a big business, ever. I work with quite a lot of big organizations. And I was actually designing a video learning program. And the target audience was small businesses that were, needed to think differently in lockdown. And he ran a small business. Okay, and I used to go in with my ideas, and I used to say to him, I want you to challenge me on these. I want you to tell me what's relevant, what's not. He's basically my relevance filter for this particular project. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant because I got so much different perspective on it, but it was because I encouraged a productive challenge back. Okay, so little exercise right now, okay? I am going to get you this time in pairs, and it's an exercise called Productive Challenge. Just turn and face your buddy. And I want you to label yourself person A and person B. Person A and person B. If you haven't got a pair, put your hand up. Yeah? You could, if you are in free. So, person A. I'm hearing this debate in the events world at the moment that hybrid events are great. I'm hearing that argument, which is we can get more people there, we can really work the room, but then people can dial in from home and all those things. Person A, I want you to argue that hybrid events are absolutely fantastic. The best thing since sliced bread. So when I say go, that's going to be your argument, person A. And then don't worry, because person B, when you go, I'm going to get you to argue the case for they're the biggest headache in the world. They're a nightmare for events professionals and anyone organising an event. That's going to be your argument. But we're going to keep the 2 arguments. We're going to go person A first, your argument over to you for the debate, then you flip to person B. Clear on the brief? Yeah. Person A, argue that hybrid is the best kind of event in the world. Go. Okay, person B, you argue for the case. They're the biggest headache in the world. The floor is yours, over to you. They're a nightmare. Okay, folks. Final part. But by the way, I tell you, some are getting well into this as they. Final part is a bit of a coming together. So the coming together is, what's the middle ground? So now rather than heated debate, what's common sense about what common sense about hybrid meetings? What's best practice? Have that quick conversation now. See where you get to the middle ground. Bit of compromise. Make friends. Okay, everyone. It's very good to see you. It's very good to see you all making friends again. So after that heated debate, so anything that came out of that conversation, where did you get to on the middle ground? I'm interested because I'm running a hybrid event quite soon.
The thing is it does suit certain people not to be at an event.
Yeah.
Rather they'd be at home watching it or listening in.
Yeah.
And not contributing. But then there's the other side that do want to be.
So there's a bit of empathy here, which is, it suits different types of people here. So how do we make the most of that? Yeah.
For a physical venue.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I want people to come out and meet them.
Yeah.
I do get that you have to.
Connection is important, but it's not for everyone in that format. Yeah, interesting. Any other thoughts?
So we were just talking about the fact that engagement is a massive problem.
Yeah.
And therefore, the interactivity has to be key. So if you get caught out with your pajamas on,
Yeah.
and or not listening, and then you get pulled into a breakout room, and suddenly you're like, oh, if you know that's happening,
Yeah.
you're more likely to be engaged in the call. The positives are, accessibility-wise and inclusion-wise, you can draw in greater audiences.
Yeah.
But like Liz was just saying that she'd organised an event, and actually there were supposed to be thousands of attendees, and there ended up being like 30.
Wow.
So
Okay.
the dropout rate is huge if you make it too easy, I guess. But then,
Yeah, there's not enough almost social contract to be there if it's just a opt-in. Yeah, it could be there, right? At the back, we had a hand raise. Any other thoughts?
I guess, how many of us during the situation of 2020 signed up for hundreds of virtual events?
Yeah.
Let's say 20 virtual events. All of us had a second screen, a phone, and things going on.
Yeah.
How connected were we with it?
Yeah.
Genuinely. We started that funnel process of, that sounds really interesting, I'm going to sign up, I'll give my details. And you got closer and closer and closer to the event. And then the event happened, and then you went, I'll run it in the background while I'm
Yeah, exactly, yeah. The temptation of other distractions is
20
key.
years' time,
Yeah.
I am not going to be telling my friends in the pub, on Sunday night, I watched Elton John as the fireworks went over the pyramid stage, and my children came downstairs, and I said, go back to bed.
Yeah.
Watching it virtually.
Yeah, exactly.
Was 2%
Yeah.
of being in the middle of the largest audience ever.
Yeah, exactly.
For a headline act on Sunday.
No, that's an argument. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I guess the point here is to encourage difference of opinion. And there's a lot of live debate in there, although you probably all quite agreed on the challenges here. So it's a really important thing to do. Often, I think what we do is we in the world of work we try and unlock it from people, but we're not as direct of going, challenge me, challenge my thinking here. There was a great technique I used to run when I was trying to get people to innovate on challenges, which is actually called the Cynic Clinic. You develop some ideas, and then you go up to someone and say, I want you to go as dark as you can on why these ideas are awful. Edward de Bono calls it deliberately put a black hat on and challenge my thinking. Because actually when you get that, you spot weaknesses. You might fall in love with new ideas, new concepts. Whereas if you get this going, you're going to go, oh my God, that's totally a valid reason why all my quality and lovely thinking isn't going to be a success. So you spot those kind of potential hurdles before they're a real problem if you get positive dissent happening with a group of people. Final tip, everyone, and then into kind of connecting time, etc. Let the conversation carry on, is demand feedback. Okay, demand feedback. I think I mentioned this time, last time when I ran a session up here, which was, I think we need to take the relationship we have with feedback from receiving it from other people to demanding it. Okay, because if you demand it from a group of people or an individual, it looks like you want that piece of feedback. Whereas a lot of feedback, if it's delivered to you top down, you know, it's that creepy conversation, isn't it? Someone comes up to you when you don't want the conversation, you're getting a coffee and they go, can I give you some feedback? Yeah, and they sometimes go, are you in a good place to get some feedback? And you're like, no, because you stood a bit close to me and I'm getting coffee and why are you doing that weird voice? So if you demand feedback, it's brilliant for learning, but it's brilliant for psychological safety because it shows you really mean it. And that just the end kind of principle here is stolen from Pixar. They have lots of great structures in their business that encourage psychological safety. You know, they've got people in their organisations that are heads down coders mixed with absolute creatives coming up with concepts for new movies. So it's really important they have all this covered. But there's a great read, which is the book called Creativity Inc., and it's written by the founder of Pixar called Ed Catmull. And Ed Catmull puts a lot of their success as a business down to the fact that they have one meeting which is all about demanding feedback from people. It's called the Brain Trust. And they have a process at Pixar. And ultimately what they ladder it up to is they say, this process takes an initial movie concept, that American terminology, that sucks, to one that doesn't suck. I mean, in their case, mainly blockbuster movies is their creative output. There's very few exceptions to that, apart from the odd Cars movie is a bit average, but it's mainly great output. Let's debate that over a beer later on if you love Cars 3. And what they do in this Brain Trust is they assemble a group of people who, and they have an originator in that meeting. They've come up with a concept for a movie, the next Toy Story, whatever it may be. And they present it to the Brain Trust, and they have a few rules that's all about demanding great feedback. Number one rule is that when you're on that team, there's zero hierarchy. Doesn't matter if Ed Catmull's on the Brain Trust, there's zero hierarchy. Okay, number one. Second rule is all feedback is delivered with good intent. I.e., if it's really challenging, all I'm trying to do is make your movie better. So, you know, it might be a character that's just a bit confused and we need to make it a bit clearer. We might need a twist in the plot that needs to be a bit stronger. Whatever it may be, they're just there to make the movie better. Next tip is, as the originator, and this is interesting, you cannot be defensive about what you're putting forward. If you're getting this feedback, you can't go, yeah, well, we thought of that. And the reason why we went with this is that you just let it in, whereas how many times are we defensive around feedback? I tried that, but yeah, it didn't work, and yeah. Next one is that any bit of feedback, no matter if it's from, you know, the most important person in the room technically because they earn the most money, any feedback is a suggestion, not a prescription. Okay? Because if everything's a prescription, people will just, you know, add in all the elements to it and it'll create very confused work. And then the final structure, the rule, is that the feedback has to be delivered with empathy. Because that person has put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into the work. So whatever you're delivering back has to be with empathy. And they put down most of their success from a creativity point of view in a culture of really candid feedback with empathy. And this Brain Trust is a great structure. So I guess the final little thought on that is, you know, where's your Brain Trust? Whatever work you're doing right now, who do you go to, demand some feedback as suggestions, not prescriptions, to make your work even stronger? I think we could all do more of that, okay? So there we go, folks. A few tips on psychological safety. Very quick review just to wrap up, mainly because I've got the visuals to do it. It's like a little PowerPoint. So I think we're all agreed it's important to be good at in the world of work. Would you agree? Yeah, okay. It's not just a nice to have. It's about bringing your whole self to work, okay? When you've got that, Amy Edmondson, who came up with the term, says, it's like taking the wheels off a team when you get this right, because everyone can just be themselves. Tip one, show vulnerability. Yeah, you don't always have to have all the answers. I then shared, myth one was, it's not business critical, by the way. Myth two was, it's just about leaders. No, I think we can all do this. I think we can all bring out the best in each other. There was myth one. Myth three was, it's just about being nice to each other. It's anything but. If you get this right, people can really challenge each other. I think that banter you talked about earlier, banter's quite harsh sometimes, but if it's with good intent, it's a good thing. Get people to speak up as early as possible with no pressure on the answer. A really important thing to do. Small groups, false economy of going, let's get inclusive by getting loads of people in a room. No, break them down. If in doubt, split them out is the catchphrase I use. And then 2 other tips. I've lost them. No, demand feedback. And also encourage some positive dissent. Okay. So I'll end there. All I'd say is, as always, it's a pleasure to hang out in a speakeasy with loads of wonderful, like-minded people. I would like to demand some feedback, which is, I always run these sessions. I always try new things out as well. I've got another session in September. Any things I did well, any things I could do even better next time, grab me for a quick chat in there. If there's any questions, grab me for a quick chat in there as well. Keep the conversation going. The only 2 tips I would give, 2 books I'd recommend on this topic. One is in my bag. It's right here. It was sent to me as a gift. And I've read it, I've enjoyed it, I've listened to it, I enjoyed it. The Psychological Safety Playbook. It's by 2 very smart consultants called Carolyn Helbig and Minette Norman. Okay, I've interacted with them a lot on LinkedIn. It looks so simple. You kind of go, are they really making money out of a book like that? But it's so simple, it's beautiful, really actionable ways you can make psychological safety happen. But then the book, to make sure that it's all grounded in great psychology, great business stories, is The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson from Harvard. Really, really coined the phrase psychological safety. Another fantastic read. It's not a hard, annoying read. It's really good with great practical stories in there as well. So, any more to say? No? Another wonderful Elevate session. Quite a cosy one. The world of events is quite busy. See you in the bar for more connecting. I think there's a summer break now. And then we'll be reconnecting back in September, where we're going to be having other sessions on things like public speaking and disruptive thinking and careers. So get ready for that. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Thanks for a great evening. Keep the conversation going on in the bar. Away you go.
Elevate is a pioneering free mentoring program that has been designed with a specific goal in mind: to inspire, inform, and empower people within the events industry. Elevate and this podcast is powered by the generosity of our partners and supporters. We are Collider, Our Live, The Hoxton, Special Source, The Venue Group, the Association of British Professional Conference Organisers, Castle Bell, Event Decision, Times 10 and TRO. Together, we're changing lives, careers and the events industry for the better.